Thanks for joining us on this episode of the HiredUp podcast. And today I am joined by founder and CEO of HiredUp. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for doing this. This is fun.
Yeah. How does it feel being on the other side? Normally you're the host.
I know. I'm usually running this. It's nice. I think I told you yesterday. I was like, nobody ever interviews me. So let's do something.
I think people will be very interested too to kind of hear your story and kind of hear, how HiredUp got started. I know a little bit of it, but I think people will be interested.
Absolutely.
So kind of take us back to your backstory. Where are you from? Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school?
Sure.
Kind of all that.
Sure. So I grew up here in Dallas, had a great upbringing. I had parents that were entrepreneurs, both very risk tolerant individuals. I always tell people to go be more risky. And I think sometimes I need to sort of watch what I say with that because it's easy for me to say, because growing up in an environment where risk was tolerated, it's easy for me to accept that sort of fear. And so, grew up in a very risk-tolerant house, like I said. Parents both started companies, took on massive amounts of risk when I was younger. Literally, worked us into some serious debt and millions of dollars worth of debt. And just risk starting businesses. And, they've both done well in it, and it's worked out for them. And grew up and always saw them just hustling, just working really hard to provide value for people, to provide, the greatest amount of value for the greatest amount of people. And I knew that I always wanted to do my own thing. So from a young age, I was always trying to make things better. I remember going on a family vacation when I was probably 5, and there was this little beach by the river that we were at, and it was in San Antonio. At the time, there were probably 6 or 7 other kids that were building sandcastles. And within about 2 to 3 hours, I had every kid on the beach, like working for me. Like I had this whole plan of this whole, stream that we were building and this whole city. And I had it all worked out. And, that could have been a control problem early back then. But I think a lot of it was just, I always knew that even from that young age that I wanted to kind of be the one that was calling the shots, and I had a passion to lead people. And so fast forward all throughout school, went to a great school, went to a really hard school, middle school, high school, and just a lot was demanded of us. 4 hours of homework every night.
Oh my gosh. Did you go to a private school?
I did.
Okay. What private school did you go to?
I went to Liberty Christian.
Okay.
In Argyle.
Yeah.
So it was difficult. It was not easy. But throughout high school, always had jobs. So when I was 16, I went and worked at a candy store.
Nice. What candy store was it?
It was called Hey Sugar.
Okay.
And so a friend of mine, their family owned it. And so I went and got a job there, and I was sweeping floors and scooping ice cream.
Nice.
And I remember Saturday would come and I would get my paycheck. And my paycheck was $56 a week. I remember looking at that going, this is ridiculous. Like I'm working my butt off and making $56 a week.
I know.
But it was fun. I had a blast. I really enjoyed it.
Right.
And I'm glad that I now am always able to kind of have that as the first job. Left that and heard about this company called Cutco, the kitchen knives.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I had friends who worked
for
Cutco. Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah.
So Cutco's really popular. Basically, for those that don't know, it's a company that sells very high quality kitchen knives, and they do it through high school and college students. It's a pretty genius business model.
I feel like you would thrive too, kind of in that.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. So pretty much 99.9% of all people that work at Cutco get recruited. They have a friend that goes to work there, and then their friend recommends them to work at that job. And then they get called and brought in and interviewed and all that. I applied.
Okay.
I was like the only person probably ever.
You're like, no one reached out to me.
No one reached out to me, and I applied. I went on the web. I'd heard about it. I went on the website. I applied. Within probably 3 minutes, I got a phone call, and they said, "Hey, Evan, we'd love to talk to you. Why don't you come in tomorrow and we can do an interview?"
So there's an office?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Went in, did the interview, and I remember sitting across this kid, and he couldn't have been, gosh, I still know him today, but he was probably 3 years older than me. And so at the time I think I was 18, sitting across the desk from him, and he gave me the job, and I was pumped. I was so excited.
Yeah.
So I went home, started preparing, and I was just really excited to go and do this. I quit my job at the candy store.
I'm out.
I'm out. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. No more scooping ice cream.
Yeah.
And so started selling kitchen knives. And so I remember going through training, and it was a 3-day training. They gave us this booklet that was basically kind of the script of like everything to say and how it all works. And I remember sitting there going, okay, well, I'm not going to say that.
Yeah.
This sounds cheesy. That doesn't sound like me. I'm going to change this. I know something better.
Right.
And I had this whole plan laid out. And I started getting on the phone at the office, and it just was not working. Like people were not into it.
Yeah.
And so I went home, and I said, I called my dad over. I said, hey, I want to like role play this with you. I want to run through this script. So he sits down, and I opened it up and started reading it. And he said, son, what are all these lines marked out? I said, well, this sounds kind of stupid. And I'm not going to say that because that doesn't make any sense. And he said, how much product did this company sell last year? I said, well, I think it was like $250 million. He said, how much of that was you? I said, well, none of it. Yeah. He said, I think you might want to stick with their program first. and that was always a good lesson. In order to break the rules, you must master them first. Right. And so I started working their system and did it exactly like they said. Okay. And over time, I put my own spins on it, but I really did it their way. I had, one of the most successful first weeks in that office. Within about 3 to 4 months, I was, I'm 18 years old. I'm managing this little team of like 4 people.
That's pretty big for 18 years old.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
And then after about a year, I was making a ton of money doing it.
Oh my gosh.
And then they put me in charge of the whole office. So I'm literally the sales manager of this office. I'm in charge of 40 people. I'm 18.
Wow.
In charge of 40 people.
Still in high school?
Still in high school.
Oh my gosh.
The company hires me, my own assistant. It was ridiculous.
Oh my gosh. I told you would thrive.
It was ridiculous. Yeah. You were right. So, I was 18. I had 2 cell phones. I'm at school, like stepping out of class, like taking calls on 2 different cell phones. Yeah. I'd leave school, go home, eat some food, change, head to the office, and then run meetings all night. It was ridiculous. It was crazy.
That is crazy.
But I fell in love with the speed back then.
Yeah.
And from a young age, people have always told me, Evan, you're going to burn out. You need to slow down. You're doing too many things at once. You've got too many plates, spinning right now. And I always hated that.
Yeah.
I never liked it when people told me to slow down because that's when I was my happiest. Like I love functioning right on the edge of complete chaos. It's just, I love it. Like that's where I like to be. So this was really the first time that I got to experience that, and it was great. So
sorry, real quick. Have you read, I think it's called The Miracle Equation by Hal Elrod?
So he's a Cutco guy.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, Miracle Morning.
Miracle Morning, yeah. And then he also has another book called The Miracle Equation.
I haven't read that one.
Something along the lines of that. But he talks about Cutco and his experience in there. So I just thought it was funny.
Hal was he was a good dude. He very successful selling Cutco.
Yeah, it sounded like it.
So left that, graduated high school. I went to Arizona State.
Okay.
And when I got there, I was 2 weeks in. And I started looking around and realizing that there wasn't a sales department, really. There wasn't really a program.
Right. Because you had been doing that with Cutco and you really enjoyed it.
Loved it.
So you're trying to find something like that at college, school? Yeah.
Exactly. So 14 days, and I should mention too, so 14 days after I start my freshman year at ASU, my dad's diagnosed with stage 4 cancer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so I remember he came out, to see me right before he started treatment and getting ready for surgery and radiation and all this, just to hang out with me for a couple days.
Yeah.
And he left, and I remember thinking, okay, I need to occupy my time. Yeah. Like I'm not just going to sit here in this dorm room all year. Like I need to get busy because, whatever is going on there in the home front, I need to fill my mind up with something. Yeah. And later I realized that probably I ran away from more than I should have.
Right.
It was the normal response.
Well, I mean, you're a freshman in college too. That's already a big responsibility.
Yeah.
And a lot of stress put on you.
Sure.
So,
Moving to a new place and never been there.
A new state.
Didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
And so anyways, decided that I wanted to figure out where this sales program was. And so started looking around and realized that they had a club that was called Spark. And Spark was intended to really introduce people to sales and really just kind of show them like what sales was all about. And that had just been started. And then they had this idea for a club called Sales Scholars. And it hadn't begun yet, but they had some people picked out, and they kind of had the structure of sort of what they wanted it to look like. And the person in charge was a guy named John Dietrich, who has been on the podcast, and who's now one of my best friends in life and just greatest people that I know is John. And so I worked my way into a meeting with John, went to go see him in his office. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I walked in, he said, well, Evan, it's great to meet you. But this club is really for upperclassmen. This is really intended for juniors and seniors. And so, you can definitely enter some of the competitions maybe and things like that. But this is an upperclassmen club. But let me see what we can do. And, maybe we can work something out. Yeah. And I was like, all right, well, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
I need to.
You're like, man, I was 18 in high school, running a whole Cutco office.
Let me tell you what I've been doing.
Right.
Let me tell you what I've been doing.
Yeah.
Really just kept working on that. Really got an interview for Sales Scholars, and they let me in. So I was a freshman. Oh. I didn't even know how to get to the meetings or anything. Yeah. Like I'd never been on campus before.
Yeah. So I guess you probably didn't have a car on campus or anything like that? Yeah.
No, I was walking.
I mean, why would you need to?
Yep. So. I was walking everywhere. Get into this club, and I show up on day one, and it's all these juniors and seniors, and these people were
intimidating.
Oh, they're like men and women.
Yeah.
And I'm this kid from high school.
That's funny.
And they're these like proper men and women who have been in college for years. And it's funny because looking back now,
right,
they're a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
But they were
perspective.
Oh, it changes so quickly. Yeah. But they were these men and women, and so I go in, and I'm still great friends with a lot of the people in that class today. So they said, all right, well, welcome to Sales Scholars. Here's kind of what we're trying to do. We really want to create an elite group of salespeople in the W.P. Carey School of Business, and blah, blah, blah. First things first, we need to elect a president. And so,
like me?
Well, yeah. So like, I think one or two people raised their hand.
Yeah.
And they're like, I want to be the president because, I'm a leader and this and that.
Right.
And so I raised my hand.
Did you have to give a speech?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think I was barely 19 maybe.
Oh my gosh.
And from high school, I had to use Google Maps to get to this meeting.
Oh my gosh.
And I get up and I'm like, I was a little bit, cocky back then.
Yeah.
But I was like, listen, here's what I've been doing for the last few years. I know what this club needs. I see a huge vision for this group. I think all of you can be making six figures once we graduate. And this is going to be great. I just went on this whole big spiel.
Yeah.
Left the room, come back in. They said, all right, Evan, you've been elected the president. I was like, oh no.
Oh my God.
What am I going to do now?
Like, what do I do?
That was kind of an accident.
Yeah.
So over the next 4 years, we built that club into something really special. That club is now one of the leading sales programs in the United States. They repeatedly finish at the top of sales competitions all over the world. All over the United States.
Wow.
They've received multiple awards. They've received a ton of actual monetary rewards for a lot of the people that win these things. And it's been sponsored. I think we started with probably 5, maybe a little bit more companies. There's now 30 sponsor companies that are in that program. So it's a serious operation. Yeah. And that taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about, and really John was the one that taught me how to be a diplomatic person,
right?
How to be a proper leader, really listen to people, and not just go in and torch the village, but really, take a step back and understand people's needs and wants. And that was a lot of fun. And so unfortunately had to graduate and leave that. I was really sad when I left that. I'm still sad, but graduated school and went and worked for Tom James, so the custom suit company. Yeah. Start selling suits. I'd always been interested in clothing and fashion, and I always liked to dress nice, and decided that that's what I was going to do. People had been saying that it was a good gig and I could make good money and meet great people, so I was in. Started selling suits, and I had great people around me, great mentors, great leaders.
Yeah.
just people that were interested in my success.
Right.
They truly wanted the best for me. And I did very well. I sold a lot of suits. It was an incredible job.
And to backtrack real quick, where
Sure.
did you find your mentors? Did they all come from your sales?
Most of them were from sales,
Okay.
but
In college?
I always knew, Brieonna, that there were people out there that had what I needed.
Yeah.
And so I always was very interested. Like I would reach out on LinkedIn all the time.
Really?
Oh yeah. I would just go talk to people that I knew were interesting. I'd go find, I'd pick up business cards at just stores and shops. If there was a business card, sometimes they have a business card at the register that says owner and then it's the name.
Yeah.
I'd pick that thing up and I'd call that person and go talk to
Really?
them. Yeah. I always knew that people out there, and still to this day, I mean, everything you ever want to know has been written down somewhere in a book. And all the advice of what to do and what not to do is out there. And there is somebody out there who has already done what you want to do, and probably many people. Yeah. So I always wanted to go find those people. So yeah.
So you just call them up. You're like, "Hi, my name's Evan York.
Just
Can I
cold call
talk
them.
to you?"
Yeah. And sometimes I'd come up with a crazy story.
Yeah.
I'd be like, "Hey, this is Evan York. I'm a college student over at ASU," or I'd come up with a different school.
Right.
I'm doing a project on, it happened to be whatever they did.
Yeah.
And I want to come and interview you and talk to you about it. And
And then this was just for your personal knowledge, just to get to know these people, get inside their minds, get their advice.
Yeah.
It wasn't for any type of class or anything like that, just for your
Just for me.
personal. Interesting. I've never heard of anyone doing that before.
There's definitely folks out there that do it, but
Yeah.
I was always just very interested in learning what people had to say.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Good trait to have.
Yeah. Well, I knew, Brieonna, that like I said, people out there had already done what I wanted to do.
Right.
So anything that I wanted to do in my life, and we can go back and talk about a couple of those things like racing cars and books and all of that.
Yeah.
Like anything that I wanted to do, I knew that people out there had done it. So if I could just get around those people and ask them the right questions, things were probably going to work out.
Yeah.
And I had some funny jobs back in college, which, we can talk about if you want, but I graduate, I'm working at Tom James, selling suits. And I remember very vividly the moment that I knew that this was not going to be the place for me. And I don't get me wrong, for those of you listening out there, I love Tom James. They're an excellent company. But I remember I was the number one rep in the office my first month. Number one by a landslide. I won by a lot.
That's crazy.
And I remember being in the end of the meeting month, the closeout for the month. And I remember sitting there and they had a slide deck up on the screen. And they accidentally put up the page of the leaderboard for the month with all the stats and how much everybody had sold. And I remember it came up and they went, "Oh, well, we don't show that." And they went right into, "Well, hey, Evan did a great job this year." And they started naming everybody off. And I remember looking around being like, "Are you freaking kidding me?" Like I busted my ass for like 4 weeks slinging suits to everybody I know, working for 17 to 18 hours a day. And that's the kind of, acknowledgement that I get.
Right.
So it was much more of a group environment, and people were very acknowledged. Don't get me wrong. But I just remember that lacked the cutthroat, like I'm going to win. Like, yes, we're all in this together, but I need the opportunity to beat you.
Right.
It lacked that. So I knew kind of then and there, like, this probably isn't gonna cut it. And there were a couple of things that just didn't quite match. And, for many, many people, it's an excellent job. For me, I just knew that I was never going to be happy there, and they probably weren't going to be happy with me either. So left that job, and I had no plan. Yeah. Which is exactly what they tell you not to do.
Yeah, I know. Were you scared? Were you nervous? Or was it just like, I need to find my next thing?
I knew I would find something.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what yet, but, I'd made good money at Tom James, so I'd had some cash stocked away. Yeah. So I didn't really need, there was not really a financial need for me at that point because I was, I'd banked a lot of cash from that job. Anyways, decide to, and from previous jobs as well throughout college, but anyways, decide to just sort of start searching for what I wanted to do. And I started thinking, I know a lot of sales students across the country. I know a lot of companies out there. I know just right off the top of my head, 30 that I can call up the vice president of sales right now and, be in their ear from the sales program. And so I thought, well, I wonder if I could like recruit those people. I wonder if I could start like a sales recruiting company specifically. I mean, 70 to 75% of the students that came out of Sales Scholars, our program at Arizona State, made $100,000 a year their first 12 months out in the marketplace. Wow. Which is kind of unheard of.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that. And I remember my first deal was with an insurance company in town.
Okay.
And I remember, finding out exactly what he needed. And I went and found him the person.
And how did you find the insurance company? Is this just someone you knew, or did you cold call them? Or
kind of a mixture of both. Yeah. So I had known them, but I had no idea if they were hiring people. Right. No idea. I had known them, and then just started really researching more about like how they were building and who they were hiring, and then just went and sat down with them, and ended up cutting a deal with them. Yeah. And so. Go out and find his candidate and connect the two. Took me about 5 minutes to do it. And the guy got the job.
That's crazy.
And so I made more money than I did in any other job in about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember sitting there going, okay, well, that was freaking great.
Yeah.
But then I felt sort of guilty, which... you can make a lot of money doing that, but I was like, well, it took me like 5 minutes.
Right.
That wasn't really that hard. And the value that I just provided this guy, both parties, was excellent. Like this person got a job, this person got an amazing client that's going to make them way more than this money throughout the next, couple of years. But I was like, well, there's got to be more than that. Like that's not a huge amount of value for a large amount of people.
Right.
So I really started observing sort of what was missing. I knew there was a technology play somewhere in the hiring space. Yeah. Just didn't quite know what yet. I mean, there's everybody out there, Indeed and Zip and all these folks that, are basically just, they're the digitalization of job postings and resumes, and they match each other up. And then it's just this giant board. Yeah. So came up with this idea for an app where you could really function with each other through video. And I won't divulge everything because our app's not, released yet. And maybe we can come back and touch this up at the end of the month, but
stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Yeah. And then over the course of a few months, really started putting all the other features together, and then found a great team to build it. It was a 12-person contract team that built it initially. Yeah. And then just slowly started, pushing the snowball up the hill, I guess. Yeah. And then now we're here where we are today. And, we've got, I guess, 7 or 8 people now on the team. Yeah. And we release it on the 27th. So here in just, 3 weeks. Yeah. And it's been one heck of a ride.
About to break an entire industry and flip it upside down.
You got it.
Yeah.
A complete recapturing of the industry.
Exactly. So hearing your backstory and just kind of everything that you've explained, and you might have already answered this, but where do you get your drive and your passion and your that go-getter attitude? Is it from your parents, or is it a mentor, or what kind of fuels that for you?
That's a good question. I think it's a mixture of everything. Yeah. My upbringing, seeing my parents hustle, definitely had a lot to do with it. Yeah. But I always had a natural desire to build things. Yeah. And I still am terrified, and always was, of just being sort of medium. Yeah. I never ever wanted to just be mediocre at anything. And so any job I ever had, I had to win. I wanted to be the best. Still to this day, the thing that keeps me up at night is just sort of making it. I never want to be that guy. I never want to do that. I don't want that for our company. I don't want that for my family. Yeah. None of that. And so I think a lot of that's just an inborn trait. But there have been a few people that I've met through my life that really sparked it. Yeah. And I can think of one back when I was probably 17. I went to this conference called Succeed Faster. And I met this guy by the name of Shane Mack. And Shane was a serial entrepreneur. And a couple years before, he'd sold his company to BlackBerry for, I think, like $48 million or something like that.
So you were in entrepreneurship even like back in high school. Like that is something that has always piqued your interest.
Always wanted to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. I had like a little drone company back in high school. And like I was trying to do all kinds of crazy stuff. That business completely failed miserably. But I met Shane, and Shane functioned at a different level. Like he was just wired. He was jacked up. He was just fast. His mind worked so quickly, and he was just not on edge, but you knew that he had a mission and a purpose. Like he wasn't there to waste time. He wasn't there to chit chat. Like he was there to get some stuff done. He was there to provide value, get value, and make it happen, get out the door onto his next deal. And that was very attractive to me.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget meeting him. And I remember walking away from my first conversation with him. I still know him today. I've talked to him many, many times. But that first time that I met him, I remember thinking, okay, I want to be that. Like I want to function like that guy, because he's never stopping and he's using up every bit of daylight that he's given. Yeah. Which I liked.
So kind of set the vision almost kind of for like where you want to go.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So something that a lot of people may or may not know is that you fly planes. Mm-hmm. You've written a book.
Yep.
Now you're, on your way to creating a company that's about to change an industry. I want to talk about like flying for a little bit. How did you get started in flying? Where did that come about?
So, I get giddy when I talk about flying. Yeah. Always loved flying. I never had the time or the resources to do it. Yeah. Flying's really expensive. Yeah. Getting your pilot's license is very expensive.
Yeah. Where do you get a plane?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you got to go rent airplanes and all this. And so never had the opportunity to get it done. And then I did an internship when I was in college with Textron, who they own Cessna and Beechcraft. And, they're pretty much they are the largest manufacturer of private aircraft in the world. And so while I was there, I had, we would work all day, and then all evening I had this free time. And then on the weekends I had nothing to do. There was, I had friends there from the internship, but it wasn't like I was, doing other things while I was there. So, I was making money then, and then I'd saved up a bunch of money in not a bunch, but a fair amount of money in college from working back at Arizona State. And so I was like, you know what? I want to get this thing done. So I started flying.
It was just an itch. You were just like,
I just knew I always needed to do it.
Yeah.
I'd always wanted to do it, and then I just never had the chance to do it.
Always piqued your interest.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, started flying, and I would go to work all day. 5 o'clock, I'd leave work, come home, grab a bite to eat, change, head to the airport, and fly till the sun went down every day. And then on the weekends, I would go fly all weekend. So literally from 9 o'clock in the morning till the evening, I was flying. So got my private pilot's license then, and then later, once I moved back to Arizona State, finished my instrument. And still want to get more ratings and keep that going, but it's been great.
How come you never wanted to pursue that as a career? Going into commercial, flying and stuff like that?
Yeah, it never was really something that I wanted to do, because I didn't want to do the same thing for my whole life.
Right.
There's a lot of volatility in the airline world. We're seeing even right now.
Oh yeah.
And I have a lot of friends that are professional pilots, and it's like, your fate is sort of at the mercy of the market. And I never wanted to put myself in that situation. Yeah. Not that that's a bad situation, but it just wasn't for me.
Right.
I knew that I wanted to be a business guy, not a pilot. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So through all of your experiences in creating a company, and kind of dedicating yourself through college to your sales program and stuff like that, do you ever feel like you missed out or are missing out on, being with friends, or, I don't know, doing things that normal other 22 or not 22, but, people in their 20s would be doing?
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
So I have time for everything that's important to me.
Yeah.
Everything that's important to me. Friends, relationships, business, flying, the gym, fitness, health. Everything that's important to me, I have time for it.
Yeah. Is that something that you've had to sit down and like, these are my priorities and I need to kind of align my actions with it? Because I feel like a lot of people say these things are important to me, but their actions may not necessarily align with that.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, yes and no. As I've gotten older, I've obviously made it much more strategic.
Right.
But when I was younger, I never really did. And that definitely caused some anxiety in me.
Yeah.
Always being on the edge and having so many things going on. But
right.
yes, it's more strategic now. But I never felt like I was missing out on things. I think I would have felt like I was missing out if I wasn't as busy as I was.
Yeah.
And so I always used every bit of free time that I could for something with a purpose.
Right.
That's not to say I never had free time. I mean, I still have free time where sometimes I'll just, lounge.
Well, it's kind of too like being a master of your time, making sure where your time is being spent and, just making sure you're managing your time properly.
Absolutely. Nothing bothers me more than when time is wasted.
Yeah.
When I'm standing,
one thing you can't get back.
I can never get it back. When I'm standing in a line and somebody tells you, oh, it'll be 5 minutes, and then you sink 30 minutes into it, and you think, well, if I leave now, it's totally wasted.
Exactly.
But if I stay, it could be another 30 minutes. That drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Because I have no control over that time. And like you said, it's the one thing I can never get back.
Right.
But I'm definitely very strategic with my time. I'm very careful with my time. I'm very calculated. The biggest thing that I do that helps me is I wake up early.
Yeah.
So
you're a big proponent of this too.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge. I get up, between 5 and 5:15 every day. I know people that, Morgan, who was on the podcast yesterday, she gets up at 4. I'm kind of jealous of that. So I'm thinking about how I can move some time around to do that.
So what's your morning routine whenever you wake up?
Yeah. So I love talking about this.
Yeah.
So I wake up 5:15. I'm up. I'm out of bed. I get a cup of coffee and I sit down. And from about 5:20 until probably 5:45, I'm reading the Bible.
Nice.
So spending time with the Lord, that's what I do every morning. And it just centers me. Mm-hmm. At about 5:45, I'll leave the house, head to the gym, work out for about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. Come home, have breakfast, usually watch a podcast, something like that.
Yeah.
Get ready, change, finish up anything else I need to do. I usually do kind of a planning for the day.
Right.
That usually starts the night before, but I'll finish it the day of. Just, hey, here are the things that I need to do today.
Yeah.
These are kind of my missions for today. This is the person that I'm trying to be today.
Yeah.
And then I'm out the door.
I like that.
And what's nice is, that sounds like a very quick process. But I have about 4 hours of time from the moment that I wake up to the time that I'm out the door.
Yeah, I know.
Before anybody needs me.
Right.
And the reason I love waking up early so much is because all day we're in output mode.
Yeah.
People need us. People want things from us. They're, interested in our time. They're trying to take away our time. Mm-hmm. Our families need us. If you have kids, your kids need you. If you can have 4 hours of time before anybody needs you that are just for you, to feed you and to do the things that you want to do, you will never run out of energy to give those people. Maybe physically, but you're never going to run out mentally or in your soul of energy to give those people because you've already fed yourself. You're full. Yeah. So that's why I'm such a big proponent of it. I mean, I never feel exhausted. I never feel like tired, and health is a big part of that. But I'm never mentally exhausted. I'm never annoyed by, people needing things or any of that.
Or even just like, small inconveniences that, could really turn a person's day upside down.
Sure.
I think, giving yourself that time, like feeding back into yourself.
Yep.
Probably helps mitigate a lot of that.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love waking up early, but my morning routine's fairly simple, but it's very structured. It's the same exact thing every morning, even on the weekends.
Really?
Yeah. So even on the weekends, same
You're
thing.
never tired?
No.
Man. What is one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's either looking to find their purpose in life or what they want to do, or just kind of looking for that next step for them?
That's a great question. I have this conversation so many times
Yeah.
with people, just literally every day. Probably I have this conversation with somebody. I think my advice would be pick out the thing that really sets your soul on fire, whether that's painting or fitness or technology, or, even if you don't know what it is yet, just find something that's interesting to you and start doing a lot of research on it, and then find out how you can create a little corner of space for yourself. So, for example, if you're into painting, figure out how you can paint one very specific thing that people always want painted or people need, or maybe things that people aren't thinking about. Maybe you paint water bottles. Maybe you custom paint these water bottles, right? Maybe you turn that into something where you go around and I'm a big podcast proponent. So maybe you start a podcast where you interview every owner of Painting with a Twist and Color Me Mine, and all of these like paint wine shops across town, right? So maybe you interview all of these people, and then you start interviewing painters, and then you do photography of galleries all across the city. I mean, you can really expand that passion, and you'd be surprised at how quickly you can monetize that, even with not a huge following.
I agree.
But, even if you're in a job that you don't love, find the thing outside of it that just is interesting to you, and then just take one step. So I think that's probably the best advice, is just take a single step. I think it's overwhelming when you think, okay, I've got to do all these things, or say you want to, start an Instagram page or a podcast, or there's so much data to take in. You kind of have this paralysis of, what do I actually do?
Yeah, definitely.
And I think the best thing is to just take one step. Just do one thing. Just write one article today. Just take one picture.
The hardest part is just getting started, but once you get started, you move yourself into momentum.
You got it.
So I completely agree.
You got it.
So one of my favorite podcasts is How I Built This on NPR, and Guy Raz ends every episode by asking the person that he's interviewing, how much of your success so far has been from luck? How much has it been from your skill, or has it kind of been a mix of both? And I kind of want to extend that to you. That's
a great question.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of probably a mix of both. I mean, skill to me is not really relevant very much. I've never done what I'm doing before.
Yeah.
I'd never flown planes before I started. I never wrote a book before I wrote one. I mean, everything I've done, I didn't have the skill before.
Right.
But I think that, really it's up to this point, it's been due to a little bit of luck, being at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Especially, with the hiring app in this time is a beautiful thing. But I think it's been due to observing what's going on out there in the world. I think I'm fairly good at seeing what people need and want and helping them get it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what most of it has been due to, is just, figuring out what people need, how whatever I'm selling or whatever I have can provide value to them.
Right.
And then delivering that in a way that really makes sense to them and truly does add value to their life.
I like that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Evan, for coming on our podcast today. If you are out there, like and subscribe to our podcast. Find us on social media, and we will talk to you soon.
Awesome. Very great. Thank you.